These are some of the concepts or terminologies you need to, over time, get used to and come to terms with. Concepts like that just sound so big, but it's a very simple thing. Now, the point is, you as a researcher, you want to conduct a research. You need to have a motive for wanting to do a research. It's either you're trying to create a new knowledge or you're trying to add to an existing knowledge. Whichever the case might be, if you're creating a new knowledge, well, that might be an entirely fresh research. But in most cases, most researches add to knowledge. And how do you add to knowledge? You don't want to replicate an existing research. You want to look for gaps in existing research and then fill those gaps. By filling those little gaps, it might be just a very tiny little gap. By filling those little gaps, a tiny little gap, you have also, contributed to knowledge. You have extended initial or previous research, and then it becomes yours. Now, when you are asked to do a systematic review, it is the very basic thing that will help you to kind of kickstart your research. It's like a springboard. You want to do a research. You are not creating an entirely new knowledge. So this is not like a new research entirely that you want to do. So then, how do you start? The first thing you need to do is to look at the work of others, previous studies. What have other researchers done? How did they do it? What is their findings? You have to go through all those articles by previous researchers on that is relevant to your own topic. So the process of sieving those articles, that process is what is called systematic review, because you are systemically, gathering your data somehow. Now, the first thing you want to do is, all right, you need to review other people's work. So which means you must have a criteria. You need to have a criteria for including an article or excluding an article. Now, an example of a criteria could be, all right, I want to look at recent work. I don't want to look at any article that is maybe in the 80s, in the 70s. I want to look at articles in the last 10 years or in the last 5 years. That's a criteria for your search. You may want to say, okay, I want to look at articles that are published, or I want to look at both articles that are published and unpublished, because sometimes even unpublished articles have good content, even though they are not published. So these are your search criteria. So now when you decide your search criteria, you begin to look for your article. Another search criteria could be, where you are getting your articles from. Am I going to look into this search engine? Am I going to use Google Scholar? Am I going into ResearchGate? Am I going into, there are so many ways of searching for your articles. So you decide on that. Now, when you have decided your criteria, the next thing you want to do is you want to look for your articles, previous articles, previous literatures. Now you've gathered your articles. Maybe you've gathered like 10, 20. You don't want to sit down and read through everything from A to Z. You might pick up an article and read it from the start to the end and discover that, oh, it's not really relevant to what I want. I don't like their method. I really don't like it, but you have spent so much time going through that article and then it ends up not being useful. So that is why you need to do it systematically. That is the systematic review thing. So how do you now review your articles? When you pick an article, the first thing you want to do is you go to the abstract. When you go to the abstract, when you read the abstract will immediately tell you whether that article is relevant to your topic or your research interest or not. Then you look at the keywords. When you look at the keywords, you will also know, oh no, yeah, this is relevant. Oh yeah, oh, this is talking about informal carers. Oh, this is talking about cancer survivors. Oh yeah. So when you've read the abstract and you're satisfied that, yeah, this is relevant, then you keep it aside. That's inclusion. You are including that article among your literature review. You pick another one, you read the abstract. You pick another one, you read the abstract. Now, maybe out of those 20 articles you have, you've kind of selected maybe 10 out of 20 that are relevant to your study. So now those 10 are inclusive. And then you now exclude the remaining 10 because you feel they are not relevant. Now, the 10 you have selected, you want to read them properly. The next thing you do is you've read their abstract. You know this is relevant to my project. Now you've read the abstract. The abstract has given you a kind of overview, a kind of highlight of what the paper is all about and a brief of, everything that's happened in that paper. Then the next thing you want to do is you go straight to the methodology. How was this research conducted? You want to scan through the method they used. You want to scan through the sample size. You want to see how, how the research was conducted. If you look at the method and you feel you're not convinced and you feel, no, I really don't like this method, or no, or well, then if you're okay with the method, then you continue with the paper. You move from methodology, you go to the findings. When you get to the findings, you scan through the findings. It will tell you what that research findings are. And then you go to the conclusion. So remember, you want to read an article. You don't just pick an article and start reading from the beginning, introduction, reading word for, no. First, you go through the abstract. If that article is relevant, you move to the methodology. You want to see the method that was adopted. If you think, yeah, this is relevant, you go to the findings. What did they find? And then you move to the conclusion. Now that way, you've scanned through the article and then you keep it aside. Yeah, this is relevant. So you do the same thing to the other ones. Maybe out of the 10, you might end up with like 8 and discard 2, like, oh, no, this method doesn't seem valid. It doesn't seem reliable enough, Now you end up with 8 articles. You want to start reading the article from the beginning. So you take your time, you read it. Now, when you're reading this article, the point is you are not reading it to accept everything that the researcher has presented in that article. You want to critically look. You're going to, more like you're putting on your own lens now as a critique. You're putting on a lens as a researcher. You're ready to critique somebody's work. So you put on your lens as you're reading to question some of the things you find there. How do you do that? As you're reading it, okay, 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 right. This is what they have stated as a problem. Fine. This is how they went ahead to do their this is the methodology they have employed. Maybe they have used experiments, or you know, if it's business now, you can say, oh, they use the qualitative analysis method. Well, if they, you might think, oh, if they had used a quantitative, maybe they would have had more sample size, a bigger sample size. It might have yielded better results. You see, you're critiquing the work already. So you begin to look for the strength of that article, those things you agree with. You look for the strength, you look for the weakness or limitation of that article. You look for the gaps in that article. For example, if the article focused on a specific area, you know, and you discover that, oh, they didn't cover this part of, you know, then you have identified a gap. So you must be able to identify a gap. And then you just begin to extract your data, you know, from that article. So that is how you systematically, you know, extract data from each article that you pick up to read. So that's why they call it systematic review. You're not just reading. Most people will just pack articles and be reading. They would even use pen and be coloring. But they are just reading. They don't know what they're doing. You need to read critically. You need to read it and extract useful information that would now be useful when you start writing. These are some of the things you will use to build your arguments when you start writing your thesis. Now, how do you structure your systematic review? I don't think there's a particular style of presenting it. Some people might decide to use a descriptive or narrative and be writing like a story. But if you ask me, I think if you present it in a table, it's easier to read, it's easier for you to locate information. At a glance, if you use a spreadsheet, at a glance, you can pick information without having to, you know, start looking through storyline, narratives. Where is this one? Is somewhere, is it in page 2? Is it in page 3? I wrote it somewhere. No. If you present it in a table form, you'll be able to see your information. The essence of doing this is when you do your systematic review, and you have all this information, all the previous studies you have read, all the articles, you've extracted data. By the time you start writing, these are some of the data you make reference to. You know, you want to support your own study. You make reference to this person. Well, this is in line with so person, or this contradict the study of so person who found out that informal carers, blah blah blah. You know, you just begin to build your arguments. So that's just it. So what your supervisor wants you to do is just to understand this process and to kind of, you know, present something to him. So if I will advise you, I will advise you that you should even get, even if it's just five articles, 5 good articles, and just kind of use this information I have given you to extract data from those articles. Oh, okay, what is this article saying? What's the title of the article? What's the methodology that they have used? What is the strength? What is the weakness? What is the gap? You might even put a column for your own remark, what your own opinion. That's why you're a researcher. You are a researcher like them. So what is your own opinion about that study? Do you think the sample size is too small? Do you think the methodology is valid or reliable enough? If you think it is not, why? If you support it, why? You must be able to justify every of your stand, every of your decision. So if you can just do that and tabulate it, when you have a meeting with your supervisor, talk to him like you understand what you're doing, because you need to be on top of your game. One thing you need is that confidence. Yeah, most people, what they don't understand is that PhD is like a baby. It's your baby. You are the master. You are the pilot. Your supervisor is just there to guide you, because this is your own project. It is your own baby. So you are eventually going to, by the time you get into your year two, you'll be the one leading and they'll be following you. Right now, they'll be nursing you like a baby, trying to help you find your feet, trying to help you settle in. But you need to find your feet first and have a grip of what you want to do, how you want to do it, so that you have a foundation, a framework. You must start building your framework now. And these are some of the things you need to build your framework by reading the works of others and discovering the gap in their work. It will help you to now make up your own mind about the gap you want to fill, so that you are not replicating other person's research, and then your work becomes is no longer original. So the originality lies in the fact that you are able to add to existing knowledge, or to fill a gap. I hope this is useful. Systematic review is not just something abstract. It's just a concept of you getting information to create the framework for your own research, because your research is not an entirely new knowledge. You're not trying to do something that nobody has done before. You're trying to extend knowledge, or you're trying to fill a gap to add to it. So definitely there's no way you can work without making reference to the works of others, the previous studies on what you are trying to do. You must be able to make reference to previous studies, and then at the end of the day, it will be easier for you to now spot that gap, that thing that you think is missing, that you just want to put, that hole you want to fill. So that's why they call it systematic review. How you get your data, how you decide, how you get your information, how you decide to select your articles, where you select from, why you make those decisions. If you want to, if you're going to be looking at articles that are just maybe between, this is 2021, between 2010 and 2021, that's about 10-11 years. You should have a reason for deciding that. You must have an explanation. Is it that there's a shift in thinking? Is it that there's a shift in perspective? You see, is it that you must be able to explain? So in the interim, I hope this helps.